Our lives is a duty. He is all perfection, all goodness and beauty.
Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Kareem. You're listening to Ramadan FM on 87.9 FM. This is the Health Show, and I'm your host, Abdul Rais. Welcome to the program. My sincere apologies for starting a little bit later than scheduled. Unfortunately, this is the drawback of working from home, so to speak, trying to do the show remotely. But we'll try our best, and hopefully, inshallah, there shouldn't be any more problems. Apart from FM, you can also listen to the health show via website, ramadanfm.com. And from there, you can find other ways of listening to the show as well. For example, via Facebook, YouTube, and various other apps. Please feel free to comment in any way. You can call us live on WhatsApp 0751 970241. Regular listeners to the Health from the past years would know that we know about Ramadan and diabetes during. For anyone tuning in for the first time, just to let you know that I am a Diabetes UK trained diabetes community champion, and that my mission in life is to raise diabetes awareness. I've been doing this for the past 20 odd years, and I hope to continue doing this at every given opportunity for the rest of my life. I'm pleased to say that we have a special guest from Diabetes UK with us today. Jill Steaton is a Diabetes UK head of Southeast region. I'll be speaking to Jill shortly. But first, let's talk about diabetes and Ramadan. I'll begin by defining diabetes. Diabetes is basically a condition when there is too much glucose in your blood, which isn't going anywhere fast. Excuse me. So, where does the glucose come from, and why does it not go where it should be going? Glucose comes from the food that we consume. Everything we consume, it goes into our stomach, which churns that food, and once that food's been churned, it turns into glucose and enters our bloodstream. Where it should be going is the whole of our body. It should be entering every single organ. In fact, every organ is made up of cells, and it should be entering each cell to provide us energy, to provide energy to that particular cell, to enable us to carry on with our normal activity. When this doesn't happen, in other words, when glucose is not able to enter the cells, that's when problems start appearing, and that's when a person is diagnosed as being someone with diabetes. So what prevents that glucose from entering the cells? Well, basically, the organ called pancreas produces a hormone called insulin. And that insulin is like a chemical key. So once there is glucose in the blood, that chemical, your organ, the pancreas, releases the insulin, which unlocks the doors to your cells, and glucose enters. When those cells either get rusty, the lock gets rusty, and the key isn't able to open the lock fully, it creates problems for us. And your insulin, as I said, is produced by the pancreas. So if pancreas starts producing less insulin than it's required, or it doesn't produce any insulin at all, or your body resists that insulin, that's when problems start occurring. So briefly, I'll define the two types of diabetes that people have. There is type 1 and type 2. Type 1, we don't know the reasons why it happens, but basically your pancreas just stops functioning. It doesn't produce any insulin, and so you're deemed to be type 1 diabetic. And for that, the only thing that's available is the insulin in form of injections. Type 2 is something else. In type 2, normally it's associated with the lifestyle. So, for example, if we are having too much of the wrong type of food, we're not very energetic, we're not doing proper exercise, physical activity, that could create problems for people. You could become type 2 diabetic. There are also other reasons. Sometimes if there's a family history, so if your parents have diabetes, then you're at a high risk. It's more than likely that you will have diabetes. But the most important reason is being overweight. And that's something else that we are having constant problems with. Obesity is on the increase, and therefore, so is diabetes. Another reason is stress. You are highly stressed or at a high risk of getting diabetes. It is also age-related. Obviously, as we get older, our organs start functioning less actively than they used to, and therefore that could also lead to type 2 diabetes. What happens in diabetes? We know that your blood glucose levels are too high, so you're diagnosed with diabetes. When you go on medication, certainly if you go on insulin, there's a high risk your blood glucose could sudden. So when you're fasting, 3 things can happen. Your blood glucose could be very, very high most of the time. Hyperglycemia, or it could suddenly drop. So if they drop, that's called hypoglycemia. The third danger, dehydration. When you're fasting for a long time, obviously fasting to Muslims is nil by mouth. So we can't drink anything, we can't eat anything throughout from sunrise to sunset. And that can cause dehydration. And so all of things could happen, or any of those could happen if we are fasting and we haven't taken proper care. What do I mean by taking proper care? If you are thinking of fasting, there are things you can do. The first thing is to speak with your GP, with your healthcare professional, your diabetes care nurse, and let them know. Explain, because fasting in different religions can mean, in Islam, we know it particularly means nil by mouth, sunrise to sunset. In a country like the UK, where you've got 16, 17 day, it is an extremely long time. And therefore, letting your healthcare professionals know that you intend fasting, you may ask you to, they may need your medication. They may advise you not to because you're in a high risk if you, for example, particularly on insulin or certain other medications, the tablets that could cause a hypo. So it's important that we pay attention to what our healthcare professionals tell us. Of course, alternatives to not fasting if you're not a fast. And for that, we need to refer to our scholars. But one thing to remember is that it's not automatic, sort of a foregone conclusion that the would know what diabetes actually is. So that's another thing that we need to make sure that the scholar has some idea what diabetes actually is. Because quite often we're told it's, a lot of people have it, a lot of people fast, so it's okay. In certain situations, you can fast. For example, if you've been diagnosed glucose under control because of your diet regime, because of your exercise regime, then you could possibly fast. There are other tablets that you may be on that don't actually cause low blood glucose levels, so you wouldn't get a hypo. But there are certain other tablets that do, as does insulin. It's crucial to make sure that you're fully informed yourself, and the person is also fully informed. At this point, I'd like to bring in our special guest so we can talk more about how Diabetes UK can support people during Ramadan. With me, as I said, is our guest, Jill Staten from Diabetes UK. Good evening, Jill.
Hello.
Hi, Jill. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. There seems to be a slight delay, but I think we can cope. Okay, so as I was explaining to our listeners about what diabetes is, it's such a vast subject. I will, be an hour to talk about it, but it's important to let it's not when they're there, and this is where I wanted to talk about Diabetes UK. So perhaps if we, because there are people listening to us worldwide as well, so perhaps it may be an idea if you could define what Diabetes UK is briefly, and then we can talk about things.
Yep. So Diabetes UK, we're a UK organisation. Our aim is to create a world where diabetes can do no harm. We're here for anybody living with diabetes, so not just people who actually might have diabetes themselves, but people who care for people with diabetes, who have partners, who have family, friends, work colleagues, anyone who needs support to understand more about diabetes. We obviously support people with diabetes directly in a number of ways, but we also work with the NHS, with public health, with other organisations, with local community groups and so on, to basically try and ensure that people know what care they should be getting and to ensure that they get the best and most appropriate care for that person.
Yeah, and one of the issues we have is with the BAME community, particularly the South Asian community, is the language barrier, and that's something that may prevent people from asking for help. So you have people who speak other languages, perhaps we can offer advice, help and advice.
I lost you a little bit there, Abdul, but I think I understood the question. We do have a helpline, and you can ask for translators on the helpline. But also we have a number of our literature on our website, which is www.diabetes.org.uk. There are a number of the key literature about things like the healthcare essentials, what care you should be getting, and so forth, are in additional languages. So there are a number of different languages, and most of the Asian languages will be on there that you can see the translations.
Okay, so one of the issues we have, I find as a diabetes community, I talk to people, is a lot of the time people are reluctant because they're not computer literate, for example. So if they need help, is there? You mentioned about the helpline. So is there any other way? For example, if people requested for hard copies of booklets and leaflets and so on, or somebody they wanted to speak to in their own language to ask questions and get some answers.
The helpline does have a facility for asking for translators. The thing is, you can get hard copies on our website. You can go onto the website and they're all free, the literature. The only things that have a cost are the kind of cookery books and so forth, but the actual, all the information literature that you need, whether it's in English or in other languages, are all free. And you can, a lot of them can be downloaded, or you can request hard copies to be sent to you as well. And also if you speak to someone in the helpline, they will request things. Because of the situation at the moment, it can take a little bit longer for hard copies to be sent out for obvious reasons, but it is a facility that's there. There's also other ways, you know, we have the helpline, as I said, we have the website. On the website, we have something called Learning Zone, which is an educational online facility. So you register, but it's free to do so. You write in your type of diabetes, your age, whether you're newly diagnosed or you've had diabetes for some time, and so on. And it comes up with some suggested modules that might help you learn about your diabetes, which you can go dipping in and out when you want to find out more about your diabetes. So there are things around managing your diabetes, around healthy eating, but also around things like emotional health and well-being, which we know has been such a big issue during the last year in particular, but always an issue with the people living with diabetes, but particularly highlighted in this last year. We also have in the Southeast peer support groups that we've been starting, type 1 groups and type 2 groups, where they're facilitated for 6 weeks to support people talking to each other virtually at the moment. Obviously, we do have sometimes face-to-face peer support, but not during the present situation. We also have local groups. Some of our local groups are still meeting virtually during COVID. Some of them are less so, but still keeping in contact via email and sometimes phone calls as well. We've been running a number of online educational events. On Thursday night, we had a live cookery demonstration of a South Asian menu with a South Asian cook and a dietitian asking questions. And shortly, we have a educational healthy eating in the South Asian community with a dietitian session, which I know is being looked at very popular. But apart from those more specific ones, we have ones on foot care, eyes, all the remission, all kinds of aspects. Some of the sessions have gone, but they were recorded, so people can just email us and ask for the YouTube link, and we can send it to them. And the YouTube links allows you to put in translations, I believe. And then we have Diabetes Friends, a much more recent activity, which is basically a buddying system. So you can do it via phone or email, and we put you into contact with someone. So if you're feeling a bit lonely, just want someone to talk to about your diabetes, or just about living generally, and diabetes is a factor, then we can match you up.
Jill, I'm going to have to ask you to hold for a second. We're just going to go into commercial break, and we'll continue with the conversation at the end of this commercial break. Stay with us.
To all of our wonderful listeners of RFM, thank you so much for your support. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of you during this blessed month of Ramadan. Stay locked for more amazing shows. Amazing shows.
Ramadan Mubarak from Adam Accounting Services.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Need help with your accounts and tax work?
Contact us today on 01908 692 380 and see how we can help.
Adam Accounting Services, friendly local accountants. Call us today on 01908 692 380.
Where there is extreme poverty, there are always orphaned and abandoned children. Every 2.2 seconds, a child loses a parent somewhere in the world. There are over 200 million orphaned children worldwide. Muslim Global Relief provides education to help orphaned children develop the skills they need, making positive changes in their life and breaking them free from poverty. Awarded the UK's Best Muslim Charity of the Year. Make a 100% zakat donation. Visit muslimglobalrelief.org.
Families Relief are working on a special Ramadan program that needs your help and support. Whether you would like to donate zakat, sadaqah, fidya or fitrana, your Ramadan donations will help us distribute food and clean water to impoverished families in needy countries like Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, Palestine and Africa. Help us to help them survive this Ramadan. Donate now on 0114 365 4454 or go online to familiesrelief.org.uk. Together we can save lives.
Allah has bestowed us with another Ramadan. Its days are the perfect time to help the suffering Ummah with our supplications and our charitable giving. Make the difference with UK charity Ummah Welfare Trust by supporting its emergency, development and Ramadan programs. We are part of the Ummah, and the Ummah is a part of us. So be generous and donate for our brothers and sisters this Ramadan.
Parenting in Islam is about raising awareness of both deen and dunya. It's about understanding the ibadah, adab and ikhlaqiyat. Join me, Sadia, every Sunday, 10 to 11 a.m. and let's share each other's experiences of parenting.
For a list of all our sponsors, please visit ramadanfm.com.
Ramadan, 87.9 FM.
You're listening to The Health Show with your host, Abdul Rais.
No goodness and beauty, love him more than our lives is a duty. He is all perfection, all goodness and beauty.
Welcome back. You're listening to Ramadan FM on 87.9 FM. I'm your host, Abdul Rais, and this is the Health Show with our guest, Jill Steaton. Welcome back, Jill. Before the break, you mentioned the subject of diet, and I know that there are quite a few dietitians that work with from within the NHS that work with Diabetes UK as well. Certainly, I've had one or two on my show as well in the past on different shows as my guests. The issue, the biggest issue I think is the diet. The South Asian food, two main dishes, if you like, are chapatis and rice. We quite often come across people who say, well, I can't manage without chapatis and I can't manage without rice. Do you feel it's necessary to give up on eating chapatis and rice?
No, it is a short answer. With diabetes, our viewpoint is that nothing is out of bounds, but you have to, it's everything in moderation. And I suppose it's how much you have. It's also, if you are overweight and you're trying to lose weight, then you obviously need to reduce the amount of carbohydrate you're eating, whether that's rice and chapatis, whether it's sweet sugary things, whether it's potatoes, anything that's got carbohydrate in it will obviously you need to reduce your weight, then you need to reduce the intake, but that doesn't mean you can't have any. In fact, actually, if you're having insulin, then you're probably going to need some carbohydrate to absorb that. Yeah. So there is a balance, and you need to talk to your healthcare professional about that. But it's also I think often people worry about the amount of rice and chapatis and so forth, which is right. But it's also the kind of oils we use, and ghee is very is not so good. But we also remember that all oils have the same calorific value. So some that may be healthier for you in terms of cholesterol and so on than others, but they all have the same calorific value. So you still need to reduce the amount of oil you're using in cooking, and reduce. It's low in fat, low in sugar, low in salt is what we say, but that doesn't mean no fat, no sugar, no salt.
Yeah, and I think often some of the food is not regarded as food. I'll give you an example. If that time when we break the fast, people are quite, rightly as well, I would say, but quite keen on having things like samosa and so forth. But that's just regarded as snack. So the meal is afterwards. The meal is actual chapatis and rice and so on. So the concept of snacks, I mean, if for myself, if I had a couple of samosas, that'll be it. That's my meal, full stop. But everybody's different, and especially, I mean, at the moment, obviously, with the situation, things are different. Under normal circumstances, people will be visiting each other at iftar time, and families will be sitting together, and that obviously the realization that that's carbohydrates. If you've had a couple of samosas, then that's your carbohydrate intake, and chapatis are not necessary after that. But as you say, if you're going to have those, if you're going to have chapatis and rice, just reduce the amount. Activity
and also,
is an issue.
I think things with like samosas as well is obviously they're usually fried, so they are particularly, the oil in there is makes them even more unhealthy, if you like. So you do need to. We're not saying don't have any, but if you're having them every day, that's probably not a good idea. And it is, as you say, reducing the amount and obviously increasing your exercise, which is a little bit harder during Ramadan, I'm sure.
And I haven't even talked about sweets yet. With that, sweets or something else that we just sort of seem to enjoy a lot more. But the other issue is obviously during Ramadan you're going to be dehydrated even if you don't have diabetes. Obviously, greater risk with diabetes, and therefore you're going to feel quite lethargic, and so your physical activity is limited because the prayers after the late night prayers, they are quite lengthy. So the difficulty is trying to draw the balance between the time you break your fast, your iftar time, and then next morning it's sahur time. The gap is going to get closer. It's going to be narrower and narrower as we go through Ramadan. Obviously days are getting longer, in particular in the UK. And so to balance the amount of food intake and drink, water, it's a very, it's a difficult thing really to try and manage. But with the physical activity reduced, with the food intake, the gap between the two meals getting closer, it's inevitable that, if you have diabetes, the blood glucose levels are going to, it's going to be difficult to maintain the blood glucose levels to a norm. So we've said to, suggested that people should go and speak with their expert, with the healthcare professionals beforehand. In fact, we always say to people, you should go a couple of months earlier, make an appointment and talk to them. Obviously, these days appointments are probably not the best way, but nonetheless, you can contact them. And also the other suggestion we make is that people, because a month prior to Ramadan is called Shaban, where it's a good idea to fast. You don't have to fast every day, but the more you do, the better. And therefore, one suggestion that we make also is that people maybe try during that period, fast for a day and see how they get on. And just try once or twice in a week and see how they get on. So that the body will tell them then whether they can cope with the whole of 30 days of Ramadan. I just wanted to ask you, and just really, in terms of the literature that Diabetes UK produces for Ramadan in particular, am I right in thinking that it's not just Diabetes UK who suddenly, out of a hat pull the literature, that you actually consult with the scholars of Islam, and that it's been approved. The approval is there from some various mosques and different sects of Islam. Is that right?
Yeah, oh, well, I can't speak specifically about it because I'm not directly involved in writing that literature, but I do know that our care team, whenever they write any literature, they're widely consult. So they consult with people from the communities, with healthcare professionals. We have a number of healthcare professionals that are part of a wider network that we can call on, and we will call on people from healthcare professionals who are from the Muslim community as well to help us. So it is very widely consulted, and it's updated every year depending on any changes, because our knowledge about diabetes does change. And treatments changed, the type of medication, there's medications now that didn't exist 5 years ago. So we have to update because it will affect fasting and so forth in Ramadan.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right there about talking about medication that didn't exist 5 years ago, because 5 years ago I was actually on insulin and I'm no longer on insulin. People who don't know, I have type 2 diabetes. I've had it for 20 years, and I've that's what led me to becoming a diabetes community champion as well, because I had no knowledge of diabetes really, and when I was diagnosed, I came very, very close to going into a diabetic coma. When I went to hospital, they told me that if I hadn't turned up for another few hours, I would have gone into a coma. So that's where, I was grateful that when I left the hospital, I got a lot of literature for various organizations, and among them was Diabetes UK. And 20 years later, I'm still here talking to people and talking about diabetes and trying to raise awareness at every single given opportunity that I get. But just to add to it, you said I know for a fact that Muslim Council of Great Britain are very much we're in consultation. Diabetes UK are in consultation with them when they produce literature of this sort. We have their backing, and there are also some of the scholars, some of the imams from various mosques in London as well that are consulted. So, the literature that's produced is actually based on knowledge.
I think there is a couple of videos on our website from a couple of the imams as well. Yeah. So so on the Ramadan pages, I think there's a video of yourself, Abdul, as well, but there's also some of the imams as well talking about Ramadan and diabetes.
Yeah, I do use some of those videos in my PowerPoint presentation when I when I give my but I think we obviously there's a evolving sort of situation with diabetes, and so the videos, some of them may not be up to date just yet, but the main message is there in any case. So if I just wanted to talk about volunteering, because I don't know what your experience is, but in my experience as a diabetes community champion, I find that the uptake from the South Asian community, the Muslim community, is not all that high in terms of becoming a volunteer for Diabetes UK. So I find that, obviously, like I said, so many different languages that are spoken, and it always helps because I can do 2 or 3 different languages. So, when I speak to somebody, hopefully one of the languages that I speak, they will understand, And I just wondered what the situation is with volunteering, how you find it, how Diabetes UK find that?
Volunteer, well, it's an interesting time at the moment in particular, obviously. So although we have actually had quite a lot of volunteer people come forward wanting to volunteer during the pandemic, which is interesting, and generally younger people, because one of the things, it's not just people from other communities that we might find difficult. It's actually getting younger people to get involved and to volunteer, and that's probably because they're more likely to be working and have less time to volunteer. But actually, we need people from all sort of ages and ethnicities and so on to come to support and work with us, so that actually we can reach as many people as possible. There are at the moment. We do have community champions in certain areas. We're not actively recruiting at the moment because we're just reviewing how that role works during these difficult times when we can't meet face to face, because there was a lot of activity that was related to that role that was very face to face focused. So we're just reviewing how that works, but we still have speaker volunteer roles where people are trained virtually at the moment to do talks on diabetes, which they can do in their own languages, and to reach out to community groups, to reach out to religious organisations, and all sorts of other places around their community where they can deliver those talks. So that's still a very active role. We're looking for, I mentioned Diabetes Friends, the buddying system earlier on. We're looking for people who would like to be a friend, and people who would like to be befriended. So, they need to come forward as well. Our local groups are always, most of the local groups are not very diverse, if we're honest, and they'd like to be more diverse. Most of them say they'd like to be. So please, if you want to get involved, they will welcome you with open arms, and they may need some guidance on what the needs are of a particular community. But most of them are very open and willing to share that. I know that, Abdul, you're involved in the Milton Keynes group, and that groups want to support the whole of their community and not just certain sectors. So they do, they're very keen for having people to come forward. And then we also have fundraising, obviously, we need. And there are various working groups centrally sometimes that come forward as research projects that are asking for volunteers to participate, and you can register with those on our website, so that because again, if we're doing research, we need to make sure that all areas of the communities are reached out to, because it will vary as to the research. Otherwise, we need it to be very broad. So we're always looking for people to join those research groups. And even our trustees, the trustees of Diabetes UK, the people responsible for the running of Diabetes UK, are volunteers. And we're looking to make that as diverse as possible.
Yeah. And you mentioned it, my mind goes trying to find a cure as well, and it's important, despite in some parts of the community, to emphasize that there is no cure to date for diabetes. People seem to think if you have certain kind of vegetables, for example, I don't know, Jill, if you've heard of Karela, it's a vegetable that's regarded as very bitter vegetable, but if it's cooked properly, it isn't. The experts know how to do it. I have no idea how to do it. I can eat it, but I can't cook it. But anyway, it's because people think that sugar, because one thing we have is, and I think it's most BAME community terms, people refer to diabetes as the sugar disease. So sugar, they associate with, as being the sugar, everyday sugar that we have. And of course, it's not. It's glucose. That's why it was important for me to define initially as to what glucose is, where it comes from. Because people think sometimes that if you have something bitter, that will neutralize as sugar. And my answer to that really is give this example talks, which is that if you have a cup full of tea and you put 10 spoonfuls of sugar in there, it's going to be very, very sweet. But then if you add 10 spoonfuls of salt, it's going to be extremely salty. But the sugar hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there, And it's the same that if you eat something bitter, the taste in your mouth might be, bitter, and being a vegetable, it's full of vitamins, I'm sure, but it has no effect on diabetes, and there is no cure for diabetes. And the Diabetes UK are the only organisation in the UK, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, a voluntary organisation that are actually doing research, to try and find a cure for diabetes, as well as trying to help people manage their diabetes. And because diabetes comes with a lot of other, mental issues and other issues as well, depression and so on and so forth. Am I right in what I've just stated, Jill, or am I?
Yeah, I can't really talk about other organisations because in the details of all there, but obviously certainly we're the biggest organisation that's doing this. Yeah, definitely there isn't a cure as such for diabetes, and certainly for type 1 diabetes there is no cure. With type 2 diabetes, although there isn't a cure, a number of people more over the last couple of years have managed to put their diabetes into remission, which means they've managed to control their diabetes by going on a very low calorie diet under medical supervision, and have managed to reduce their blood glucose levels to within the normal range. We don't call that a cure. We call it that they're in remission, because obviously if they went back to their habits of eating and being overweight again, then they're likely to develop symptoms of type 2 diabetes again. But so we don't call it a cure, but there is some people who can put their their type 2 diabetes into remission, and it usually works best when within the first 6 years of diagnosis.
Yeah, and as you said, there is no cure as such. Remission is something that will work on certain people. It won't work for me because I'm just like tiny. It usually works on people who've got a lot of weight to lose, and when once they lose that weight, hopefully things will get back to normal for them. But as you say, they would need to stick to that diet. If they go back to normal, then of course diabetes will return as well.
The diet is for a fixed period of time on a very low calorie diet, and then gradually you get back to eating a more normal diet, but probably less than what you had before if you were very overweight. But as you say, the research has mainly has focused on those people who are overweight, significantly overweight initially, but I believe there is some research now on people who are not quite so overweight, and we'll have to wait to see what the results of that are.
Yeah, and also this term remission is sometimes referred to as pre-diabetic as well. So if somebody's told that they're pre-diabetic, it's a sort of like a warning sign which says you need to, X, Y, and Z, lose weight, and be more active, watch what you eat, and so on and so forth. And hopefully you wouldn't become a fully fledged person with diabetes. So
absolutely, but I think also, Abdul, just sorry to interrupt there, but also it's important that with pre-diabetes if you are overweight, and so to lose weight and to increase your exercise is going to be really important. But that we know that some people aren't overweight at diagnosis as well. But I think the key thing for everybody is it's being aware of the signs and symptoms of diabetes, so that if you do get them, then you get diagnosed quicker and go and get diagnosed as quickly as possible, because the quicker you get diagnosed, the quicker the healthcare professionals can help you manage your diabetes so that you don't develop the complications of diabetes that no one wants.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get time to talk about the signs and symptoms of diabetes. But I'll very briefly mention that if you get thirst all of a sudden, if you're extremely thirsty all the time, you need to go to the loo all the time to pass water. You feel lethargic, you get blurry vision, you get headaches, any of those things, or if you lose weight very, very quickly, those are the signs. And please do get yourselves checked. It's not a painful test. It's just a bit of blood they'll take out of you and let you know whether you have diabetes or not. So it's important. And if you're from the South Asian community, we know the risk is very, very high of getting diabetes. So it's important that we keep a check on that. Unfortunately, we're just coming towards the end of the program, Jill. I just wanted to say I'm really, really grateful. Thank you very much for coming on the show to talk about diabetes in Diabetes UK. Sadly, if we had more time, it would have been great, because this is a sort of subject that we could go on for a long, long time. But hopefully another time, perhaps.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing? Please, can we encourage people to go and get the vaccine if they haven't, or when it's their turn, when they get called? It's really important.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that as well. Thank you. Yes, it is the fatwa from the imams is that it does not affect your fasting. It does not break your fast. So please, when you get, I have had both doses, thankfully. I feel fine. So yes, it's crucial. We want to be out and about. We want to be able to get on with our normal life, and so it's important that when you're called to get the jab, please get it done. Thank you very much, Jill. Really grateful for that. Yeah. So this is it, and we're coming to the end of the show. Inshallah, next week I'll be back with another episode, with another guest, another topic. In the meantime, if you understand the Urdu language, then I shall be doing the Urdu show on Monday, same time, 6 till 7, and look forward to that show in the time. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Assalamu alaikum.